Are you a figure drawing student or you go to live drawing every week, but you're feeling frustrated with gesture drawing because if you try to stay loose in your drawing, then the proportions aren't right. And if you focus too much on the proportions, then the gesture gets lost. Well, this is a major challenge that most figure drawing artists face. In this video, I'm going to explain how to stay with the gesture of a pose, but ensure that you can achieve accurate proportions in your work. My name is Siobhan and I teach a dynamic and expressive approach to drawing the figure. I help artists and students to break free from dull, lifeless and stiff figures and to unlock their unique and artistic voice through figure drawing. If you want to develop this way of drawing or understand this approach, then definitely subscribe to this channel. I also write about figure drawing every week over on Substack, and I'd love you to join my newsletter. So I've left a link for you in the description below. The first thing that people do when they start a gesture drawing is to create what's called a line of action. This captures the overall sort of single expression of the pose. And this is a very good impulse. Having something like this on the page immediately gives you not only a starting point, but a really important reference for the whole drawing. So no matter what you do when you start your gesture drawing, if you get that first reaction down on the page in the form of as something as simple as a line of action. From there, you're almost nearly halfway to solving your proportion problems. For the simple reason is that this line of action is going to be your reference point for proportions throughout the rest of the drawing. So really you want to make marks in the first 10 to 20 seconds that at least block in something of that feeling or that impulse that you see in the pose. The gesture, by the way, is not the figure itself. It's not the anatomy or the anatomical landmarks. It's the quality of the pose. What does that mean? Well, say for example, if the model is bending over, that's a bending pose. Or if the model is arching backwards, it's an arching pose, a stretched pose, or a twisted pose. When it comes to gesture drawing, think of the action words that you can describe what the model is doing in a general sense. And it really helps to think about movement. How is the body moving? What is the model actually doing? That might sort of naturally make you think about the anatomy, but what you want to do is follow the anatomy in order to draw the movement. For example, this elbow is bending. Well, draw the bending, not the elbow. This torso or chest is tilted. So draw the tilted aspect, not the muscles or the bones of the torso. Back to our drawing here. So now at this stage, this is where most people, once they've gotten down like a line of action or a few lines of action, this is where they'll start to try to refine the gesture drawing by adding on details or features of the body. So the discipline here, when you're doing a short 1 minute or 2 minute gesture drawing, the discipline is to stay with that first impulse, that first movement or action or feeling that you saw and that you captured in your first line of action. Use that exact same approach to continue the drawing. So now from here, there are literally two things that I do to steer my drawing towards correct or accurate proportions, but to stay with the movement and the action that I'm trying to express. The first one is particularly useful for standing poses. I apply what I call the rule of halves. The rule of halves is basically, I will look for the halfway points between all of the lines that I've put down. If I've put down a line of action that describes the length from head to toe, I'll see where's the halfway point on that. And then I know that that divides the figure up between the upper section and the legs. On the legs, the halfway point is going to show me where the knees are. On the arms, if I look at my line of action that describes the arms, the halfway point is going to tell me where the elbow is. Now that's very, very rough, and obviously it's not a template for the human body. And particularly, as I keep saying in the gesture drawing, you're not trying to draw anatomical details like that. But identifying where these halfway points are gives you a little bit of a map, gives you a little bit of a guide, and helps you really to maintain proportion going forwards. So the second thing that I do is I constantly compare whatever it is that I'm drawing at any given time to something else on the figure. And by doing this, by constantly comparing one section to the other, you're ensuring that you're staying more or less in proportion because you're able to judge distances, relationships of size, and placement of different parts of the figure. So, for example, if I'm following the gesture through this arm and looking particularly at the graceful curve of the arm, I'm noticing where is that hand in relationship to the head and the shoulder? What is the distance? That will help me from not putting the hand way too high or way too low. On this side of the model, if I'm following the gestures through this arm, I'm going to be noticing or trying to identify where is the hand in relation to the leg. And I can see that it's about 1/3 of the way down the upper leg of the model. So then I know to stop drawing there. Another thing that I look at in a fairly quick gesture drawing is the placement of the feet. And I always want to compare the placement and position of one foot against another. So throughout the drawing, I'm either following very obvious lines that are made up by the skeleton or the muscles without necessarily drawing them as such, or I'm following outer contours. By using the line itself as a tool to compare lengths or to compare relationships of size, it's all about keeping the drawing fluid and free flowing. You can let your line work search things out for you. You can go over and back on certain areas to make corrections without ever having to erase your line out. In this way, your line is actually becoming a measuring tool itself. If you get used to this method of comparisons and comparative drawing, it really trains you to be instinctive when it comes to judging proportions. Now, the caveat for that one is even though you are comparing anatomical landmarks, you really need to resist the temptation to stop and dial into the details and draw them as specific parts of the anatomy. For a gesture drawing, remember, we're only ever really drawing for 1 minute or 2 minutes. Any longer than that, and it starts to become something more than a gesture drawing. So gesture drawing is a really important aspect of figure drawing to develop, especially if you're going to life drawing. If you'd like to learn more about this approach and about the specific techniques that you can develop in order to improve your gesture drawing, then I'd love you to join me in my Gesture Drawing Masterclass. When you sign up, you also get access to the Drawing Live Community Hub. You can avail of weekly drawing critiques, live drawing sessions with me, as well as workshops and events. So I'll leave all of that information for you in the description below, and I really hope to see you in there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.